Hello everyone. Today we are going to talk about a very important and fascinating topic in linguistics, the dynamic relationship between languages. Curious, languages do not exist in isolation. They constantly interact, influence one another, borrow features, and change over time. This presentation focuses on three important phenomena in language contact: substrate, superstrate, and adstrate. These concepts help us understand how languages shape each other across history, culture, migration, conquest, and everyday communication. By studying these processes, linguists can better explain why languages develop the way they do and how human contact leaves traces in vocabulary, grammar, and pronunciation. Let us begin with the foundation of language contact. Every language carries traces of its encounters with other languages. Thoughtful, no language develops in a complete vacuum. Whenever communities come into contact, their languages also begin to interact. Sometimes this influence is small, such as the borrowing of a few words. In other cases, the influence is deep and long-lasting, affecting phonology, grammar, and even the identity of the language itself. Curious, this chapter introduces the main ideas behind language contact and explains how such contact becomes a force of linguistic transformation. Language contact occurs when speakers of two or more languages interact regularly over a long period of time. As a result, their languages begin to influence each other. Curious, this area is studied by a branch of linguistics called contact linguistics. It examines how languages change when communities live side by side or communicate through trade, migration, colonization, or border interaction. Thoughtful, language contact may happen at geographic borders, during large migration movements, through military conquest, or in multicultural societies. In all these situations, languages are shaped not only by internal development but also by external social contact. There are three major concepts used to describe the historical layers of linguistic influence: substrate, superstrate, and adstrate. Thoughtful, these terms are based on the relationship between the languages in contact and especially on the question of power, prestige, and dominance. A substrate is the influence of a weaker or subordinate language on a stronger one. A superstrate is the influence of a dominant language on a subordinate language. An adstrate refers to mutual influence between languages of roughly equal status. Curious, together, these three concepts allow linguists to classify different patterns of language contact and better understand historical language change. Now let us look at substrate influence. A substrate situation appears when speakers of a less prestigious language gradually shift to a dominant language. However, while adopting the new language, they often preserve some habits from their original language. Thoughtful, these habits may affect pronunciation, rhythm, sentence patterns, or word structure. In this way, the older, weaker language leaves a lasting imprint on the new dominant language. The presentation gives the example of the Montgomery substratum influencing Burmese phonology and word structure. Curious, this shows that even when a language loses its dominant position, it may still survive indirectly through the linguistic features it passes on. In contrast, superstrate influence happens when a higher prestige or politically dominant language affects a subordinate one. This often occurs through conquest, colonization, or elite rule. Thoughtful, in such cases, the subordinate language usually remains alive, but it absorbs many features from the dominant language, especially in vocabulary and prestige-related expressions. A classic example is the Norman conquest of England in 1066. After this event, Norman French became the language of the ruling class and had a strong influence on Middle English. Curious, as a result, English borrowed many words connected with law, government, nobility, and cuisine. This demonstrates how social power can become linguistic power. The third type is adstrate influence. This occurs when two languages of relatively equal status coexist in prolonged contact without one fully dominating the other. In this case, influence is mutual. Curious, each language may borrow features or gradually become more similar to the other. The presentation mentions the Balkan-Sprachbund as an important example. In that region, languages such as Albanian, Greek, Romanian, and South Slavic varieties developed similar grammatical features, even though they belong to different language families. Thoughtful, these shared features include post-posed definite articles and the loss of the infinitive. This example clearly shows that languages do not need to be genetically related in order to become structurally similar. The second chapter of the presentation moves from types of influence to the outcomes of intense contact. Curious, language contact does not simply leave historical traces. It can actively reshape languages and, in some cases, even create new ones. When languages remain in close communication for generations, they may begin to mix, exchange structures, and converge in form. This process is especially visible in multilingual communities, where linguistic interaction is part of daily life. Thoughtful, so this chapter explores not only influence, but transformation. One of the most visible results of language contact is language mixing. This means that languages exchange words, structures, and communicative habits. Curious, the first type mentioned here is borrowing, when one language takes words from another. English, for example, borrowed café from French, algebra from Arabic, and tsunami from Japanese. The second type is calques, or loan translations. In this case, the idea is translated literally rather than borrowed directly. The third type is code switching, when bilingual speakers alternate between languages in the same conversation. Thoughtful, code switching is very common in multilingual societies and reflects real linguistic flexibility rather than confusion. Another important consequence of contact is language convergence. Over time, languages in close contact may grow more alike in their structure. Curious, this means similarities can develop not because the languages come from the same ancestor, but because their speakers interact intensively. In extreme cases, contact can lead to the creation of entirely new languages. The presentation mentions pidgins and creoles. A pidgin is a simplified contact language used for practical communication and usually has no native speakers. Thoughtful, a creole develops when such a pidgin becomes the native language of a new generation and expands into a fully developed linguistic system. This is one of the strongest examples of how contact can create something entirely new. This slide reminds us that multilingualism is not unusual. In fact, it is the normal condition of human society. Thoughtful, the world contains thousands of languages, and a large part of the global population speaks more than one language. There are also hundreds of active contact zones where languages continue to influence one another right now. This means that language contact is not only a topic of the past. It is an ongoing reality of the modern world. Curious, every time people from different linguistic backgrounds communicate, they contribute to the continuing evolution of language. The diversity of the world's languages is closely connected to the diversity of human contact. Based on the slide statistics and summary on multilingualism. To conclude, substrate, superstrate, and adstrate phenomena are essential for understanding language history and language development. Thoughtful, they help linguists reconstruct migrations, cultural exchanges, political dominance, and long-term interaction between peoples. More importantly, these processes are still active today. Curious, languages are never fixed or static. They are living systems that change as people move, communicate, trade, and build relationships. Thoughtful, so the key message of this presentation is clear: a language contact is one of the most powerful forces behind linguistic evolution. By studying it, we better understand not only language, but also human history itself. Thank you very much for your attention. Sincere, I hope this presentation helped you better understand how languages influence one another and continue to evolve over time. See you in the next lesson. Goodbye.